have too many folks that are rewarded at the highest rates in the top tiers for standing still, or in many cases regressing. I think that you should probably ask yourself, what are the desired behaviours of a contract desk? It's likely to be growth to some sort of degree, and you should probably align your incentives with that. We're all trying to get more from less. But remember, commission is an incentive. That is the fundamental thing. Don't lose sight of that. People are getting more scientific, more rigorous with their approach overall to structures, as well as how they fit within the broader rewards program, or the multifaceted nature of a cohesive incentive program, which is another one of the big things that I think is going to come to the fore in the coming years.
Today we're joined by Carl Jones, founder and CEO of Konquest, the #1 commission software for staffing and recruiting. And today we're going to dig into what the fastest growing agencies are doing differently with commission plans, how to fix the most common mistakes in comp structures using automation, and why you should consider a tiered, threshold-driven commission model. That is a mouthful, but welcome, Carl.
Oh, thanks, mate. I'm really grateful to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. It's a common area and quite misunderstood.
I bet, and such a critical one, given the nature of recruiters and their sales approach, and to be able to really drive that motivation and behavior. So let's start with the why. You launched Konquest, to solve a real pain point. What was broken and how agencies were sort of handling commission schemes?
Well, the main thing that was broken is it's all been done manual, and this is still true today. As a rule, if you look at the whole industry, you represent it as a percentage and round it. 100% of the market are either in Spreadsheets or they're in Konquest. There's kind of no gap. And that was the opportunity. So I saw it in my own agency, which I've never operated in internally, but it's my exposure to the industry. And there was a spreadsheet involved. And being a software guy, I kind of nonchalantly said, let's replace that with some software. Discovered that there wasn't any that was built for the nuances of the staffing industry. Of course, it's full of idiosyncrasies and all kinds of unique stuff. And just thought that there was a better way to replace that process, but then an opportunity to do way more. And that's what we're kind of focused on now, is not just let's automate some calculations for you and save you a bit of time, but how can we actually leverage more from your existing incentives, your existing commission, in order to drive greater performance. And, we're in 2025, that has to be software, at least in my opinion.
And I guess the next question is, so what? Why are commissions so critical to the performance of a high-performing agency?
Well, it's ubiquitous, isn't it? Not just in recruitment, but in sales, just more broadly speaking. And I think that's because it's hard. Like, sales is hard, recruitment's hard. Definitely in the current climate, of course, the last 24 months or so, it's become exponentially more difficult. And therefore, we have fundamental structures that have been around for millennia. One of those is incentives, and incentives play an integral part in sales performance. Taking that part aside, if you look at any recruitment business, go to their P&L for any period and just look at the costs, the overheads. At the top, right at the top, you're going to have salaries, and then right behind that, you're going to have commission. It's a big cost, and it's there for a reason, because it works. And therefore, my belief has always been that it deserves attention. Any other big cost that you saw in your P&L would, have a real magnifying glass over it. And I think the same is true for commission. It's a tool to drive performance. It's one of those rare levers that can impact both ends. So it impacts profitability, but it also impacts revenue trajectory as well. And I think that it needs to be treated seriously.
Yeah, spot on. As you say, it's very much a sales, business development type role. So having that quality of structure that can really motivate and incentivize, and I guess create also a fair and level playing field in terms of how actions and results are linked to the commission themselves. You recently released the Recruiter Commission Census. I've had a good read through that. I will drop the link in the show notes. Curious if there are any kind of stats or insights you felt like stood out from that report.
Yeah, definitely. So the census is an annual exercise for us. This is the second year that we've done it. It's free. You can just go to the website and grab it. It'll be good to share the link, but it is just free and it's in good circulation. Over 1,000 downloads this year.
Brilliant.
And yeah, there are some trends that are really shown. I mean, I don't think folks should be very surprised with the first one, which is a big increase in thresholds, the application thereof, and the size. And nature, and there's a lot of data in there around this, but the headline is thresholds are now in the majority of agencies. It's been around 50-50, it's bumped its head on 50% for some years now, and I think the post-pandemic downturn, the stretching of margins, the difficulties in the last couple of years have just had folks really focused on that. So there's been a notable, substantial increase in the presence of thresholds. The other one, which is a totally different side of things, is a big increase in the presence of what we call layered schemes, which just means that you've got more than one component. This is best practice, in my opinion. We've been advocating of this for some time. We saw a 40+% increase year on year in this application. And anyone listening to this that has any kind of problem with their commission, if you have a static commission scheme, particularly if it's just running monthly, you should just search for layered scheme, Konquest, read our blogs, have a look at that. It's a great tool. It can solve a lot of problems. It introduces gamification at a really simple level, drives performance, protects margins, allows you to introduce a threshold without having a threshold. And a lot of folks have started to do that now. So people are getting more scientific, more rigorous with their approach overall to structures, as well as how they fit within the broader rewards program, or the multifaceted nature of a cohesive incentive program, which is another one of the big things that I think is going to come to the fore in the next, in the coming years.
And just to peel the layers back a little bit more, so on the thresholds, can you just talk a bit more about what agency leaders and ops people should be thinking about, considering around thresholds?
Well, I would say that's not where you should start. And that's a mistake that people make.
Yeah.
I think really what needs to happen, at least on an annualized base, the fastest growing and the most profitable agencies review things at least annually. That's something important to reach out. There'll be people listening to this, and lots of folks, and this is in our census as well, lots of folks that haven't reviewed or changed their commission in years and years, some 10 years or more. Craziness. Lots have changed in that time. I would encourage everyone to be reviewing at least annually, and you want to start from the top. The top is the business goals. So what are the goals of your organization in the next 3 to 5 years, whatever that may be? What is the strategy to deliver that? That'll then lead you to the roles, the responsibilities to deliver against that strategy. And then your incentive plan should be, how do we incentivize delivery against that strategy for each of those folks? You shouldn't just be going straight in and just saying, oh, we don't have a threshold, our margins are squeezed, let's introduce a threshold. It might work, but I don't think that's the right way or the best way to approach this thing. Structure is important, and threshold is just part of your structural considerations. So unfortunately, not a simple answer there. I do think it needs some, a proper approach.
Yes. One stat that really stuck out to me was 75% of the respondents said that they admit having a current issue with their commission setup.
Yeah.
Why is that? What's happening? What if you could speak to each of those? What would be some common threads? Is it lack of education or know-how to build the right commission setup, or it's just not seen as a priority, in the busyness of the agency?
Oh, mate. So yeah, I can speak to this, for days. But I think that the long and short of it is that I've described commission as almost becoming like the wallpaper of the industry over time. It's been there for that long. It's been there for all along. A lot of people just implement what they had in their previous job, and they've started their own agency, and they just take the same thing and just say, oh, this'll work. And there's definitely been a lack of any kind of scientific rigor. We're in the age of data. Find me some data on this. You'll find our census. That's it. And that's not, braggadocio. We are the only one that's actually said, okay, we're going to gather some data on here, try and, bring some sort of data and some sort of rigor to this topic, as otherwise there isn't any. And where there isn't data, then I think there's a lack of confidence in decision making, and therefore decisions just aren't made. And that's the worst thing I think that we're seeing now. And in that post-COVID era, salaries were increased. Folks were offering big salaries, heavy commission with no threshold, and they've run into problems. And very sadly, we've seen some loss in the industry as a result of that. If there was greater distribution of best practice, of thought leadership, of the data that gives folks confidence, then perhaps that could have been avoided. But I think that today, that's just like an obvious gap that we can fill, and that's really a large part of our go-to-market at Konquest is just the recognition that we have a real opportunity to fill an otherwise empty room with this information that can hopefully help folks. And when you help folks in that way, then when they realise that they have a problem that you solve, they come to you. You become front of mind, and that's why we started the census, which will continue to run now every year, as it just seems like a natural fit for us.
It is a brilliant asset, and I agree. I've not seen anything of that nature about this topic. So yeah, well done for, I'm sure, putting in a lot of effort to build that and publish it and offer it out free. So thank you to the team. So if I'm an agency for deep in my spreadsheets at the moment, and I bring on Konquest, talk us through like how does it work? What's the before and after with Konquest for managers and the recruiters themselves?
Yeah, so the before is pretty much going to be spreadsheets, limited visibility, manual calculations, which might be right. That might be right for your agency, depending on where you are in your scale and your journey. And if you're a really small agency, boutique with only a handful of people, that might be the right tool for you there. If you want to scale though, if you want to grow, if you have a larger business, a more complex business, then automation is your friend. And when you come to Konquest, we will plug into your source systems, which would typically be CRM or ATS, pay and bill systems for contract and temp and all that type of stuff. We bring all of that data in real time, automatically into the Konquest platform, calculate all of your commissions in real time, instantly, organize everything into interactive statements, and then all of your team have real time, on-demand access to that, past, present, and future. So, dashboards, we have real time notifications, we have gamified features, all of this stuff, which is like bells and whistles that help you take it, to the next level. So I think massive time savings, increase in transparency leads to increase in trust. That sort of culture normally helps in boosting motivation and happiness, and all of the above lead normally to greater performance. So our customers tend to see ROI from the time saving, the accuracy, but also the boost in performance from their people as well.
Yeah, I think that trust and motivation is often overlooked, and often the aha moment after the fact, right? And I've been in sales. I've been, at the end of a quarter thinking, right, what's my commission going to be? And then it goes to the finance department, and they do some calculations. It comes back, and they've missed deals, and it just loses a whole lot of trust. And then I'm halfway through the next quarter, not quite sure if I've been rewarded for my efforts. So it's massive.
It's too late as well. That's the other thing. It's the missing piece. It's too late to influence. I've said this a couple of times. Not everyone completely agrees with me, but I do think there's some truth to this in that commission in particular, but I think broadly most incentives in recruitment, it's more of a reward for the past than an incentive for the future. And what I mean by that is it's all at the end of the workflow. So you pull a job, you shortlist your candidates, you get them through interview, you get an offer, you make the placement, and then your commission's calculated. Well, at that point, it's too late to have a maximum impact. So my view and our view is that if you leverage technology properly, and it's not hard, if you leverage it, then you can actually influence actions yet to be taken. That will have an impact on discretionary effort, and that naturally tends to lead to greater performance, greater urgency, quicker performance. These attributes that we probably all want to see more of in our business.
And that kind of brings up another question in terms of tiering, which you mentioned briefly before.
Mm-hmm.
If you could talk us through, like, what's the advantages of a tiering scheme versus like a flat rate scheme, again, towards motivation and outcomes?
Yeah, so I always offend people. I'm always worried about offending people when I say this, but flat rate commission plans, terrible. Get in the bin.
Right.
As a rule,
Yeah.
right? There are exceptions. The exceptions would be less desirable behaviours. So if you have, someone on a contract desk, they may occasionally do a perm deal. You might have a low flat rate for those perm deals. So like, we'll reward you if we really have to do these, but we don't want to incentivize you to focus there. Otherwise, tiered or banded or layered plans, as they may be called, definitely best practice, almost ubiquitous in the industry at this point. You probably know the figure better than I do, but it's somewhere between 75 and 80% of the industry have taken this approach. And it's because of the simple mechanics of it. It's not rocket science. You have almost like a basic level of gamification to it, as in the more you do, the more you're rewarded. But there's also this psychological impact, both to the negative and the positive, flat versus tiered. Because a flat rate, what you're effectively saying is, we will reward our top performers at the same rate as our underperformers. You're all going to get rewarded at the same rate. I don't think that works well from a motivational psychology perspective. Whereas if you're a top performer, you should have a bias, a skew to more payout to those people. That works for both the producers, but also for the business, for the finance team, for your margins and everything else that's in there. The other reason related to that is a flat rate just fixes your payout rate. So no matter whether you're performing or you're not, your payout rate is fixed. That's going to squeeze your margins even more. And particularly in today's climate, I just don't think you need that. You need something that's more dynamic, that will grow as you're growing, that will contract when you're contracting, so that you're protecting yourself at the bottom end and incentivizing performance at the top end. And that's really important. Don't just think about the bottom end. Don't just think about my margins and can I reduce payout. Also think about the top end as well, as how can I get more from my commission scheme. And I've got lots of thoughts on how you can do that.
Sure. And yeah, it'd be great to hear a bit more about the implementation part of Konquest, and I'm also thinking about what's the time to value, in terms of what's the implementation time, rollout, and how quickly are you seeing agencies come back to you saying, brilliant, after X number of weeks or months, they're seeing the impact.
Yeah, it relates broadly to the cadence of each client. So some folks will pay their commissions monthly, so they're going to see a quicker return. In exec search, it's more like quarterly or maybe even biannually. So obviously the times are slowed there. We're dealing with people's income here. Like it's high stake, so we take this very seriously. Our customers come to us, we go through an in-depth implementation, which is multiple phases. One of those phases is a hypercare phase, where we go through several periods, literally holding your hand with your existing process in parallel. And that's because it's complicated. And some things you may forget to tell us, and we need to be able to react and take care of those as they come up. There'll be the odd exception, which you haven't seen in years. Suddenly it rears its head. You need to know, how do we systemize that? So time to value is in the single months, but it'll depend on how quickly we can get through those payroll periods, so that you approve all of your commission statements. Everyone benefits from the visibility. And then, of course, you've already benefited from the time savings and accuracy.
Brilliant. So it seems like a no-brainer, really. It does. This is, as you say, it's driving people's behavior, motivation, trust, their back pocket, which we all know is a critical piece of recruitment. If I'm an agency owner listening to this, what should I be thinking? Is there one kind of commission strategy I should be thinking about, or a way of approaching such a change in my business?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can download our assets and you'll get some help, and it's free. It's free. You're not buying anything. It'll give you some help on this stuff. My top tip would be, which is basically coming from the conversations that I've had recently. So like in the last few months, is I understand that margins are squeezed. I understand that we need to be more profitable, and I understand that we're all trying to get more from less. But remember, commission is an incentive. That is the fundamental thing. Don't lose sight of that. I'm worried that people are losing sight of what commission really is. Don't look at it as just a cost. How do I minimize this cost? You should look at that, but also give equal weighting to how do I get more from this? How can I leverage greater performance? How do I increase engagement with my people with this incentive so that it gives me more performance and I have to worry less about the cost? I'm focused more about driving more performance. And as I mentioned a little while ago, don't just look at your commission and just, we've had this problem, so let's fix that particular part. You'll end up solving for symptoms. What you really need to do is take a step back and understand where does commission fit within your incentive program, and how does your incentive program align with your strategy to deliver against your business goals. And that's, I think, the best way to do that. And people can drop me a line, and I have conversations with people for free all the time.
Sure.
15, 20 minutes of my time, I'm happy to help. But those would be the basics that I would say, in a quick 2-minute answer.
I love this conversation, Carl. It's having done a number of episodes this year, and it's AI, it's automation, which of course you have that within your tool. But what we've been speaking about here is real data, it's real impact. And I think certainly something that every agency could learn from. And having Konquest, I think, would certainly pay dividends as we head into 2026. A few wrap-up questions just to end the episode. Is there a favorite comp kind of structure or something out of the box that you've seen over your time that you kind of like, oh, that's a bit different, or I like that approach?
Well, I think that it's to each their own, and it's very personal to every circumstance. But broadly speaking, I would say layered plans, layered structures are very powerful. For the majority of agencies, I would be recommending that's the first place, the first structure to take a look at. Maybe something monthly with a quarterly overlay, or quarterly with biannual, whatever fits the dynamics of your revenue trajectory. And the other thing I would say is that the biggest problem is contract. That's where the problems are. And we have too many folks that are rewarded at the highest rates in the top tiers for standing still, or in many cases regressing. I think that you should probably ask yourself, what are the desired behaviours of a contract desk? It's likely to be growth to some sort of degree, and you should probably align your incentives with that.
Nice. And in terms of running your own business, Konquest, it's been, I think, coming up to 8 years now. Is there, and this might be useful for people running the agency business, is there a kind of way that you approach running your team and growing the business, and or any kind of advice you've received over the years that's really stuck with you?
Yeah, 8 years, that seems like a long time. The first few years were just a total write-off, right in the pandemic and all of that stuff. But it gave us time to get product market fit. And I think in the tech industry, and rec tech is no exception, product market fit, it's so important for everything, for your early growth, for fundraising, for your mental health, because it's going to get rough if you don't have a very good product market fit. And the other thing I would say actually is that product market fit evolves. Just because you think that you've got it right at one point in time doesn't mean that's it. Now we're off to the moon and we're going to be billionaires. I think you must always, particularly as a founder, you have to stay really close to your customers, to the problem, and ensure that you don't deviate from course. I think that's quite easy to do once you see the growth happening. And we've definitely went through that and continue to go through that. We're continually monitoring what we need to do, and if you don't do that, then you can run into problems. And I do think it can be avoided with just a little bit of patience.
That's a fantastic call out, I think, and particularly suited to recruitment staffing is listening to your customers and your clients and your prospects, and yes, adapting to the market, because it's not a stagnant thing, right? Things are changing, competition, clients' needs. Final question, Carl, is there anything that I should have asked, or anything you want to kind of wrap up the episode with?
I don't think there's anything that you should have asked. I've enjoyed the questions you've just asked there, Jason, and the conversation. I guess the last thing that I would just say is just speaking to the stuff that we give away for free. Just anyone that's listening to this, Konquest.io, there's a full resources section there. We have multiple high value assets. It's all free. And hopefully it'll be of some value. And if you have any real pressing questions, or you're really stressing or losing sleep about any of this stuff, then link in with me. Let me know. I'll help you if I can. Again, that's free. I might call on you for a small favour in the future, but I'm happy to help where I can.
Brilliant. I'll drop all those links in the show notes. Commission Census, Carl's contact details on LinkedIn. And thanks all for dropping into this episode.